Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. And last week, the DC Extended Universe ended with the release of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. And it's really as anticlimactic as it sounds. Overall, I think we can all agree the DCEU was quite the social experiment. I think overall I liked it, mostly the Snyder parts of it, but it is what it is. But before the series of films falls into obscurity, I think I want to take the time to talk about the power levels of these characters. A lot of people always said that the DCEU was trying to play catch up with the MCU, so I figured why not put the DCEU Justice League up against the Avengers' final boss himself, Thanos. Basically, I'm going to be doing the events of Infinity War, but replacing the Avengers with the Justice League. I'm going to try to restrict it to the main members of the Justice League, so no Shazam, Black Adam, or Dr. Fate. But maybe if I choose to talk about an endgame battle sequence, I would try to integrate some of the wider DCEU characters, but for the moment, let's talk about the main ones. I also want to note that this is a base Thanos we're talking about. Obviously, I'm not going to give Thanos the entire Infinity Gauntlet because, you know. So Thanos is going to pull up to Earth, maybe with his Black Order, and it will be up to the Justice League to stop him from getting the Infinity Gauntlet. Do the Justice League have what it takes to stop Thanos, or will this just be a repeat of Infinity War? But before that, if you guys like the power scaling content, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. We post weekly videos and we cover a wide variety of topics. From Godzilla to Finance of Freddy's, this is the channel you want to be at. Also follow my socials. With all that garbage out the way, let's get into the matchup. I suppose I'll start off with Thanos and his Black Order. The Black Order in particular being really underrated, so this will be a good opportunity to talk about how powerful these guys are. But before I get ahead of myself, Thanos that I'm going to be talking about is the Thanos from Endgame. As Endgame Thanos is confirmed to be Thanos' physical prime, both in physicality as well as in skill and versatility. And this is supported by feats as bro 3v1's Captain America, Iron Man in his Mark 85 armor, and Thor, who's confirmed to be the strongest he's ever been at this point in time. Yes, Fat Thor is stronger than the Thor from Infinity War. And no, Infinity War Thor does not scale to the Infinity Gauntlet as confirmed by the directors themselves. And there's a multitude of statements that would imply this as well. Sorry to bring that up, but when saying Fat Thor is stronger than Thor from Infinity War Thor fans will always say that. But anyways, Endgame Thanos physically overpowered Fat Thor, even though the latter had like two other guys backing him up. But how powerful would this make Thanos? Thor, as early in Thor 1, wielded Mjolnir, a weapon formed on Nidavellir, which is stated to create some of the universe's greatest weapons. And even Rocket Raccoon starts to glaze them. He even verbatimly says that Nidavellir creates the most powerful weapons. This is quite the sentiment because Rocket himself has created weapons that can destroy entire moons. Both of Thor's weapons would scale to that as they're both made on Nidavellir. So as a baseline, they would get anywhere from at least multi-continental plus to more than likely just baseline moon level. This is consistent with Mjolnir's feats because during the events of Thor 1, the weapon was shown to shake an entire planet, which was calculated to be anywhere from 2.1 teratons to even as high as a whopping 731 teratons of TNT, which is either small to large country level plus. Thor in the same movie was able to beat the Destroyer, which harnessed the Odin Force, which was described as having earth-shattering power. I want to say that this is not planetary, but if we take earth-shattering to heart, this would entail more multi-continental scaling for even Phase 1 Thor. Thanos was able to take blows from Mjolnir, as well as fight a stronger Thor while he had help. Thanos also has multiple statements confirming him to be the most powerful being in the universe. Obviously, this statement is made by people who don't even know about cosmic entities, like the Celestials, for example. But using these scans, you can argue Thanos upscales people like Thor, as Thor was pretty well known in the universe at this point. But all this would mean that Thanos would fall into the upper echelons of multi-continental to even as high as baseline moon level. Thanos has the feats to back this up, as he casually squeezes the Tesseract, which has been calculated to yield around 6.8 teratons of TNT. A small country level feat, but this was made by Thanos literally just closing his hand. Thanos was also shown to casually overpower the Hulk, a Hulk stronger than the Hulk that was clowning on Phase 1 and 2 Thor. And no, he was not utilizing the Power Stone to beat the Hulk. There's no purple hue being emitted from Thanos, and the director stated that this wasn't the case either. One more piece of consistency that I want to bring up is that Thanos was able to utilize and use the completed Infinity Gauntlet. It's stated by Tony Stark in Avengers Endgame, states that the completed Infinity Gauntlet casually emits enough power to blow up an entire continent. So overall, Thanos would scale anywhere from multi-continental to more than likely like low moon level. Moving on to speed, and MCU speed is pretty contentious. Some people say that they've only been hypersonic since Thor 3, and other people say that they've been massively faster than the speed of light since Thor 2. In reality, it's quite all over the place. But I personally fall in the middle of this scaling. I personally have the MCU at around at least massively hypersonic, and at highest, like a couple times faster than the speed of light. And I'll go into my explanation for this right now. Basically, most of the MCU should pretty much scale to Thor once again. Thor being able to fight on par with Hela, who can dodge lightning. With this instance in particular being calculated to around Mach 1500, putting her combat and reaction time at around massively hypersonic plus. This is consistent with the film's script, as it says that Thor moves at lightning speed. Relativistic plus to light speed scaling comes from Thanos having multiple instances of dodging light and reacting to light. Thanos consistently dodges and can block Iron Man's repulsor rays, which are beams of light. And also, a lot of lesser characters than Thanos who should be slower than him have light dodging feats as well. Thanos himself, while in an extremely weakened state, is able to intercept and block Captain Marvel's photon beams, which are light-based attacks. I know a lot of people like to scale everyone to Captain Marvel's flight speed, but it's kind of dubious as to even if she scales to it herself. You can just say this is travel speed. And it doesn't help that the speed that they only scale to is Captain Marvel's Earth flying speed, which is limited by the atmosphere. She would literally be much slower than she is in space. So to assert that all the characters are FCL plus would be a little weird, especially with all the instances that kind of debunk that, as pretty much every character in the MCU has feats that are like around massively hypersonic. But basically what I'm saying, MFTL for the MCU at the moment is pretty inconsistent and a little ratty in my opinion. But at the same time, I think there's enough feats to justify faster than light or like relativistic plus at the barest of minimum scaling for the MCU. Now on to Thanos' stuff. Thanos wields the Uru blade, which could break Captain America's shield with multiple blows, a shield that could endure Thor's hammer. Sword is no joke overall, as during the events of Multiverse of Madness, shown that the sword has the attack potency to kill Thanos. So the sword would more than likely scale to Thanos, have that same baseline multi-continental moon level. Thanos also has the Black Order assisting him. These guys are really underrated, and they're pretty consistently shown to be Avengers level threats. Cole Obsidian by himself was pressing Iron Man in his Mark 85 armor. These guys are some of the most skilled individuals in the entire universe, so at bare minimum, they would at least all scale to each other in the speed department. They should all have that same relativistic plus to a couple times FTL baseline for their speed. I want to talk about Cole Obsidian once again, because bro was able to take blows from a Hulkbuster Mark II. It should logically be stronger than the original one. The original Hulkbuster having statements saying that it was the only thing on the planet at the time capable of taking on the Hulk. So the Hulkbuster Mark I would upscale Thor and all those multi-continent. So these guys they can get really far if you just know how to scale them properly. But now that we've established Thanos, his forces, his weapons, will it prove to be too much for the Justice League? Or will Thanos find himself outmatched? Alright, let me start off this section by saying that once again, Batman isn't going to be too useful, unfortunately. I imagine him being a tactical leader, advising the team on what to do, while he's driving around in some contraption. Perhaps the Batmobile or even the Nightcrawler. The Nightcrawler being a weapon that was shown to casually kill parademons, and even endure multiple blows from Steppenwolf, which we'll talk about later to why it is so impressive. But other than that, he's overall pretty lacking. Like, he can fight on par with parademons who can sometimes stagger Justice League members, but usually these guys are portrayed as cannon fodder. So unfortunately, it's all pretty inconsistent. So for that reason, I don't see Batman doing much aside for calling the shots. The next set of people I will scale at the same time is a set of 3 individuals. The 3 individuals in question being Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Cyborg. All 3 of these guys showed relativity to each other. Wonder Woman herself performing dramatically better than Superman did during the finale of Batman vs Superman. She was shown able to restrain Doomsday and cut chunks of him off, while Superman spent a majority of the fight kind of getting ragdolled and kicked around. Using this, Diane should upscale from any Superman feat that was performed during Man of Steel or Batman vs Superman. Superman's most impressive feat from around this time period is performed during the events of Man of Steel, where Superman was able to destroy the World Engine, which was terraforming the entire planet, and in the Man of Steel novelization, the state of the process would take around a few weeks. According to the Versus Wiki, the energy output of the World Engine has been calculated to be anywhere from as low as 14 to as high as 49 petatons of TNT, depending on how long you think it would take. Both of these values are around multi-continental. I want to note that the accepted calculation on the Versus Wiki comes out to around large ion level, but it assumes the World Engine's merely surface wiping, which it's not doing. For reference, Krypton was bigger than the Earth, and the World Engine was increasing the gravity as well as the mass of the planet in order to match it. Meaning that the previously mentioned calculation that comes up to multi-continental is probably much more accurate. Anyway, Superman performed the feat while extremely weakened, because as they say in the movie, being near a machine that replicated the properties of Krypton was just making Superman weaker. Wonder Woman should upscale a weakened Superman from Man of Steel, and by extension, Cyborg and Aquaman should as well. The latter two could injure and fight on par with Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf being a being who could fight on par with the original Doomsday, which Zack Snyder revealed on a watch party to have destroyed Krypton's moon. Let me say that again. Doomsday in the DCEU destroyed Krypton's moon. Most people already acknowledge this and accept it, but some people say that this is merely a comic book Easter egg due to the way Zack Snyder said it, which is nitpicky to be honest. The moon is literally shattered, it's referenced to have been destroyed, and Zack Snyder himself has said that he put that in to establish Doomsday is in this world. Zack Snyder himself has also stated that this original Doomsday is still alive. And if you think that this is just abusing word of God and author statement, during Batman vs Superman it's confirmed that there was an actual original Doomsday. He's also stated on multiple occasions that Doomsday destroyed Krypton's moon, so denying that he did at all is pretty weird in my opinion.
It made sense. If you look at Man of Steel, you know, there's an image of the moon. I think it's I know what's the name of the moon. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it's cracked. You know, and in mythology, the other Doomsday broke the moon. You know,
right.
And so I felt it was cool to, like, you know, say that Doomsday exists. You know, in that mythology. So it's cool. And then that was.
Anyways, the fee has been calculated to be anywhere from as low as 41 petatons of TNT, but you could potentially argue higher, as even after thousands of years, the moon has no sign of coming back together. And this has led to people arguing that Doomsday actually overpowered the gravity binding energy of the moon as well, which would bump up the feat to requiring around 29 exatons of TNT, which is moon level. And as previously noted, these three scale to it via being able to fight on par with Steppenwolf, granting these guys multi-continental the moon levels of power. Before a higher end, Steppenwolf during the events of the Snyder Cut is confirmed to be comparable to young Darkseid. Uxas is described as being a world destroyer by Zack Snyder himself, and he stated that during his conquest he would destroy planets. And he even uses Darkseid's own line of turning planets to dust to reaffirm it. A very common rebuttal to this is that he did it via the Unity, but Darkseid in the Snyder Cut said that he was on his planet busting timing, trying to find those who had robbed him of his glory, which means that he did all this planet busting off screen after he lost the mother boxes, as the glory he's referring to as anti-life, and those who robbed him was the people that we saw fight him at the beginning of the movie, like Zeus, the Green Lantern, the nations of the world. So when Darkseid says he turned planets to dust, he didn't do it with the Unity, because he didn't have the boxes. So either Darkseid was planet busting, which seems to be the implication, or his armada was the thing that was planet busting. And even then, Darkseid should upscale his army. To infer that his army is better than him is pretty goofy, especially seeing as how Darkseid is seen as a god on Apocalypse. Like, I don't think Steppenwolf would kneel down to him if a ship that they had was stronger than Darkseid. We assume the planets that Darkseid destroyed were around Earth-sized. That would be a feat requiring around 62 zetatons of TNT, which is planet level. Remember, Uxas was the one that was doing this, and he's confirmed to be comparable to Steppenwolf, who is comparable to Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Cyborg. But moving on to the true powerhouse of the Justice League, and we're gonna have to talk about the Man of Steel himself, Superman. Superman should upscale all three previously mentioned members of the Justice League. Yes, I said he was probably weaker than Wonder Woman, Batman vs Superman, but the Mother Box seemed to have empowered him, as it went from being at best Wonder Woman's equal to really blitzing her and overpowering her, even though she had help. Superman would go on to casually beat the League pretty decisively as well, and later he would go on to embarrass Steppenwolf. Like, it wasn't close at all. Like, they just did not scale at all. Meaning, as a baseline, Superman would get anywhere from multi-continental to planetary, but likely far higher. Now, I could give you guys some consistency for planetary DCEU Superman, but I have multiple videos I want to have him in, so I'm gonna have to gatekeep that, unfortunately. I'm thinking about bringing him back next week against a certain King of the Monsters, so if you want to see that, get this video to 500 likes. Moving on to speed now, like I said, all three of these guys would scale to Man of Steel Superman, who out-weak and outflew a singularity, reference to be like a black hole, meaning that he would need faster than light travel speed in order to do this. Some detractors will question the authenticity of it being a black hole because Lois Lane wasn't being sucked into it, but they fail to realize its effects and what the black hole was only doing, as it was only sucking up Kryptonian things. So the black hole not going for Lois Lane is kind of explained by that. Another massive instance of downplay that I've heard is that no one in the entire DCEU is even relativistic due to Flash's statements in the Snyder Cut. Basically, the Flash states that when he travels near light speed, time distorts. So they will use that statement to say that no one in the DCEU is even like relativistic, which is crazy because even the DC comics that this is referenced from have that same exact statement. So are you going to argue that DC comics characters aren't even light speed when they fight? There's many feats from characters in the DCEU that get calculated to around relativistic plus. Even Batman has shown the ability to react to and dodge light-based attacks on multiple occasions. So one could simply argue that what's considered the speed of light in the DC Extended Universe is simply much faster than what we consider faster than the speed of light. Alright, so with every member in the Justice League being at least relativistic plus to even faster than the speed of light, I feel like I gotta note, the Flash and Superman are much deeper into it, with them being FTL plus to more than likely massively faster than the speed of light plus, as they perceive faster than light characters as frozen. For instance, if we assume that the rest of the Justice League was only baseline light speed in combat and reactions, that would mean Superman and Flash are MFTL plus. Keep in mind, we're assuming the other members aren't faster than the speed of light, which they more than likely are. But getting on to the Flash now for a second, the Flash should be the fastest member of the Justice League, but how Superman compares to him really depends on which version of Justice League you use. In the Whedon cut, you can imply they're around the same speed, but in the Snyder cut, which is the one I'm using, Superman should scale to the Flash's speed a little bit, but he's still visibly much slower than the Flash, but it's still enough to actually press Flash, so, you know. But moving for attack potency stuff for the Flash, in the Flash movie, he was shown to be able to kill Kryptonians, moon, so he should at the very least scale to Man of Steel stuff like all the other guys, but I'm not sure if he would scale to like Steppenwolf and Wonder Woman and like that, for instance. The Flash also has one really unique ability. He can access the Speed Force, which grants him the ability to reverse the flow of time or even go back in time and change stuff, though going back in time too far back has shown the consequence of changing the universe, which is fine because the more combat applicable version of the Flash's abilities was shown to have no real consequences on the freaking universe, so there are ways Flash can implement his speed in a combat situation, and he has the attack potency to back it up. Alright, with all that being said, who wins? And honestly, it's gotta be the Justice League. All of the Leaguers are comfortably in the same continents of the moon level ranges of power as Thanos himself. I think overall with Thanos and the Black Order against most of the core members of the League, that's actually a pretty debatable fight. They're both in the same level of AP, and they should be in the same level of speed as well. But the thing that pushes this fight over the edge is the top tier, such as Superman and the Flash. Superman's AP is just much higher than Thanos's. He's able to literally dance around and one-shot people that are on the same level of power as Thanos himself, if not higher if you give into the planetary metas. And that's ignoring speed. The only way Thanos could beat Superman is if he had the Power Stone, the same stone that's shown on screen to pretty casually planet bust. The Power Stone has also shown the ability to punch out characters that are in that same planetary level of power. But even then, Thanos still needs to subconsciously activate it in order to implement it into his fight. And the speed gap is just so horrendously massive that you could argue Superman would just walk up to him and punch him out, or even just take the glove. And even if you don't think Superman scales as high as you think I scaled him, because I know there's a lot of people think he's like country level or something crazy like that, it doesn't help that Thanos literally carries around a weapon that could one-shot him. So Superman could literally speed blitz him, take that sword, and cut his head off, and it would be that easy. And even then, if some miracle happened and the Justice League lost, the Flash could manipulate time and just reverse whatever happened. And yes, Thanos has the Black Order backing him up, with heavy hitters like Cull Obsidian backing him up. The Justice League just has more heavy hitters, and then they have one nuke that is literally Superman. But before I end the video, I guess I should talk about the planetary scaling that some of the MCU characters get. Basically, people like to use the scene in which Thanos beams Iron Man with the Power Stone, and Iron Man's able to block the shot. The same Power Stone, as previously mentioned, that could planet bust. So people argue that Iron Man has planetary durability, and he barely even scales to Thanos himself. So people use that to argue planetary for people like Thanos and all the high tiers. I don't really agree with that chain of scaling because it's shown multiple times during the events of Infinity War that Thanos controls the output of the Power Stone. This is shown at the beginning of the movie where he's threatening to kill Thor. He's trying to get Loki to tell him where the Space Stone is, and he has his brother as hostage, and when Loki refuses, he just siphons more energy throughout the Power Stone to hit Thor. Thanos is capable of performing planetary feats with the stones, of course he is. He drags a moon. But you can see from the footage, he still has to physically exert himself in order to use that amount of power from the stone. And I think people make the mistake of comparing Thanos to a Celestial. Celestials literally no-sell planetary explosions just by being born. So it makes sense that a Celestial with the light tap of the Power Stone would be able to planet bust. But it doesn't mean that even casual blasts from Thanos are planetary, because Thanos isn't stronger than any Celestial. So to kind of infer that this one-off blast is planetary would be a little disingenuous to me personally, because we see Thanos has to physically exert himself in order to get that amount of energy from the stone. And in conclusion, while Thanos fought Earth's mightiest heroes, as we found out, he wouldn't perform nearly as well against the most powerful beings in the universe. If you guys made it to the end of the video, I'd like to thank you. This video is kind of special because it's the last video I'll post this year. 2023 was pretty crazy, and it was amazing the amount of progress we made on this channel. So whether you've been here since June or you got here just 10 minutes ago, thank you. I know DCEU and MCU scaling is pretty contentious. There's a lot of arguments for either or. So if you have any disagreements, feel free to let me know. Did you agree with the video? Feel free to let me know. But most importantly, like the video, share, all that garbage, blah blah blah. We'll be back next week, but until then, stay big G fans.